Hi, everyone. Some of you may know me. My name is Jean Shaw. I'm the owner of Love to Play Dog Training. I am a certified professional dog trainer. I am also a certified dog behavior consultant with the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants. And I am a Karen Pryor Academy certified dog training partner. As of 2021, 2022, Love to Play is also accredited through the BC SPCA as Animal Kind Certified. This seminar, some of you may have seen bits and pieces of it before. It's always worth seeing again. I know that no matter how often I read or watch things about how dogs learn, the more I learn. So it's always worth learning more. I am going to be working from some notes, so I hope that all goes well too. So the focus today is on how dogs learn. And again, if you've heard some of this, that's great. Please listen to the whole thing through. You will learn something no matter what. So to start with, everybody says you must teach your dog to sit. But in real life, dogs bark when guests enter houses and they can't hold a sit. Dogs pull on leash, not sitting. Your dog might bark at other dogs and it can't hold a sit. And you focus on pushing down the bum because you need your dog to sit because dogs must sit. Your dog might steal something and it won't bring it back and it won't sit with it in its mouth. Your dog might whine and bark. It's not sitting. Your dog might be unsettled by noises, and yet you have trained your dog to sit because everybody says that. The thing is that, whoops, let me move my, I can't move it. Let me move it up. Sit is the outcome. It is the final behavior. And it's what the brain has the dog do. And what I think we actually should be doing is, rather than focusing on the outcome of the sit, we actually should be talking to the driver of the dog, i.e. the brain, rather than forcing the dog into a position. So let's shape the brain. So in real life, when your dog barks when guests enter the house and can't hold a sit, you need to increase calmness in the brain. The more calmness the brain has, the more likely you are to have a calm dog when somebody enters. When your dog pulls on leash, again, that's the outcome. If we talk to the driver, i.e. the brain, we increase calmness and disengagement from the environment. So we're working with reshaping the brain to get the behaviors rather than focusing just on the behavior. Again, if your dog barks at other dogs and can't hold a sit, we need to increase calmness in our dogs. If your dog steals something and won't bring it back or won't sit, we need to work with the brain to create more disengagement from things that the dog wants. If the dog whines and barks, it's likely that we need to increase calmness and we need to increase optimism in the dog. Dogs, like all animals, actually have a propensity towards calmness or towards optimism or towards pessimism. And there are actually studies that can tell whether a dog is more of a pessimist than an optimist. If your dog is unsettled by noises, again, it's usually that the dog is worried about something. We need to increase optimism in the brain. So here is your dog's brain. And whether or not you believe it, every dog has a brain, even an adolescent dog. I have an adolescent right now. Sometimes I don't believe that she has a brain. We're going to look at two different elements of that brain. So here's the brain again, and there's going to be outcomes like squirrels that affect that brain. But the more that we can do to create certain concepts in the brain, the more we can affect the outcome of what the dog chooses to do when it sees a squirrel. So every brain has strengths and weaknesses. And we can think of those strengths and weaknesses as building blocks. So we might have a building block in the brain that represents focus. We might have a building block in the brain that represents optimism. We might have a building block in the brain that represents calmness or self-control or grit or confidence or disengagement or arousal up and arousal down. And every one of those building blocks can be grown or it can be shrunk. I have border collies. They don't come with calmness. I build that and I grow calmness in my dogs. My dogs are bred to engage with movement and change in the environment. I spend a lot of time building disengagement in the brain, developing disengagement. And some things that are good in one environment are really horrible in another. For example, again, my border collies are bred to engage with movement and sound. And that's great if they're herding. It is not so great when they're living on a busy highway. So again, I spend a lot of my time building that building block of disengagement. So all of these building blocks make up your dog's personality. And just like in people, a personality is fluid. It can, different things can increase or it can decrease. So we can grow calmness, we can grow focus, we can grow optimism. Sometimes the world may turn the dog from an optimist into a pessimist. You all know those happy-go-lucky puppies, and the environment has affected them. And maybe a dog ran up to them and they got really scared, or a firework scared them, or somebody picked them up really suddenly, and it's just too much. And you can actually see that building block of optimism change into pessimism. So as humans, we are aware of, and we love talking about how personality can change and how it can become worse in over time. And all of these building blocks can be grown. We can grow grit. We can grow confidence. We can grow optimism. We can grow disengagement. We can grow calmness. And we know that because when things go in a bad direction, i.e. the personality has changed from the worse, for the worse, dog has become more pessimistic, more aroused, lacks more confidence. It can change for the worse, but it can also change for the better. We can grow the concepts that we want. We can grow the brain in good directions. These building blocks affect every choice your dog makes. But the big brain areas, when we play games, we're actually working on those building blocks. So we can play games of self-control, and those games actually affect how the outcomes, how the dog deals with the world with self-control. We can play games of optimism that actually creates a dog who behaves in a more optimistic way. We can play games of disengagement. And even though they're only games, we are actually reshaping the brain and changing the choices that the dog makes so it becomes more disengaged from the world, which is what we want for recalls and loose leash walking. So those are the big areas of the brain. When we change the concepts, when we grow and strengthen certain concepts, we are actually changing the output. What we also want to do now is go even more microscopic into the brain. So imagine we've got a brain and we've zoomed in and we've got these building blocks, and then we zoom in even more and we see a big warren of tunnels, and they go all in different ways. So there may be some bright tunnels, there may be some dark tunnels, and these tunnels, they're completely all interrelated, and they're actually in scientific terms called neural pathways, and they can be made brighter or less bright. Each of these tunnels, I'm going to go to the last slide here, the tunnels we can actually change in the brightness. Each tunnel represents a choice the dog is making. So based on what those big concepts are, that affects the choices the dog makes. So the tunnel leads from the area of thought or decision to an area of action. So presented with a squirrel, what tunnel does your dog choose? Does it choose the tunnel of chasing the squirrel, or the tunnel of looking at my owner and walking on a loose leash? And yes, that can be done. It's the concept of disengagement, and it's the tunnel of look at my owner and walk on a loose leash. These microscopic tunnels are all affected by the big concepts. So we need to build and strengthen the concepts that we want. So how do we make dogs make better choices? Because we can change the brightness of a tunnel. So how do we make these tunnels brighter, bigger? And it doesn't matter if it's how they respond to the squirrel, or being on leash, or being off leash, or how they respond to other dogs. It's all within our grasp to strengthen the concepts and brighten the tunnels. And we want to brighten the tunnels that are concepts that we would, choices that we would prefer them to make. I like to think of it as, let me see if I can go to my next slide. I like to think of it as a big funnel. It's a choice funnel. At one end of this funnel, we have all the possible choices that our dog can do on a second-by-second basis. And that maybe thousands of things. We actually underestimate it as owners. We take the dog off leash and they could go in one direction, they could go in another direction, they could chase the dog over there, they could go roll in the leaves, they could run after a butterfly, they could go chase a car. And that's what happens at one end. And then we go, oh, well, there really aren't that many choices. I just want my dog to sit. Well, even when they sit, they still have a ton of choices. Do they head off one way? Do they head off the other way? Do they bark? Do they stay in a sit? Do they do it down? Do they do a sit pretty? We are aware of all the bad choices the dog makes on a day-to-day basis, but we don't acknowledge that there's so many other choices that are even worse that they could be making. And we get to remember that everything a dog does is purposeful. So every choice a dog makes is because that tunnel is brighter at the moment than any other tunnel. So if the dog chooses zoomies, that's the brighter tunnel. If the dog chooses to go visit another dog, that's the brighter tunnel. What we really want is the dog to come. There were 5,700 choices that the dog could be making at that one end. And what we want is the one perfect choice. We want them to be cool, calm, and collected with traffic. We want them to walk on a loose leash. We want them to recall and not go visit the other dog. Right down here is the only choice we want the dog to make. We want them to recall. We want them to be cool, calm, and collected. No zoomies, no visiting the other dogs, cool, calm, collected, walk on a loose leash, be away from the traffic, and recall. Only one choice. So how do we get the dog to get from all of these choices to just that one choice that we want? And sometimes, you can see your dog weighing up the choices. It's like they think, oh, yeah, I'm going to come. And then they look back at what they were doing. And then they go, oh, no, I am going to come. No, I'm going to look back at you. And they're considering what is the best choice or what is the most desirable choice for them in that moment. So how do we get the dog to choose that one thing that we always want them to do? And really, it's only when they pick that one choice tunnel all the time that we have a really bomb-proof and real life ready behavior. Sometimes that's for safety. Don't run across the road, come or stop or do whatever. For a recall, we want it to get the dog out of a tricky situation. We want the dog to see that there's only one choice. So how do we get from this large number of choices down to this one last choice? I want a whiplash recall. It's not even a choice, it's a reaction. There might be other choices, like I said, zoomies, visiting another dog, grabbing clothes, grabbing the leash, playing keep away. Two choices. We have two choices for brightening up these tunnels and making the one choice more desirable. We can make a tunnel more bright. We can myelinate it more, i.e. we can reinforce it more. That makes it bright and makes it more desirable. We can do that with reinforcement. So we make sure that the dog gets wonderful food, gets wonderful social interaction, gets wonderful things that it wants when it makes the right choice. Or we can make a tunnel darker, So we can make sure the dog doesn't get the things that it doesn't want. And these two are always acting together. I reinforce the choice of the tunnel that I want. And if I do that over and over and over and over and over, the more times the dog chooses that tunnel, and the more I reinforce it with food, with play, with interaction with me, with great things that the dog actually finds reinforcing, not that I think should be reinforcing, the more that tunnel is going to get chosen. So think of a thing like boundary games. So my outcome that I want is the dog is happy on the bed, calm on the bed. This is a choice I want the dog to make. So when the dog's is calm, I'm reinforcing it. When the dog is calm, I'm reinforcing it. When the dog is calm, I'm reinforcing it. That being on the bed causes, and being reinforced for it, causes the dog to be on the bed more. And that's the choice that I'm helping them to make by reinforcing. Doing that, I'm also actually darkening up all the other tunnels, because I'm actually, by not feeding off the bed, I'm only feeding when the dog is on the bed. That's the right choice. That's the right choice. That's the right choice. The dog gets off, wanders away. I don't feed. That's actually punishing being off the bed. So I'm darkening the tunnel of being off the bed every time I don't reinforce the behavior of being off the bed, but I do reinforce the behavior of being on the bed. So I'm actually darkening all of those other tunnels the dog could be making. So I want to rehearse through games the concepts and the behaviors. Training with concepts and reinforcing the choices that I like that are closer and closer to the correct choice, the only choice. I'm actually reinforcing the behaviors I want while I'm building the concepts in the brain that help those to be the right choices. So here again, we have the brain. We are reshaping the brain. I'm working on all the concepts through my games of optimism, confidence, engagement, disengagement, etc. And what ends up happening, because I am reinforcing the dog for making the right choices, problem behaviors tend to go away because they are not being reinforced. That does not mean ignore them. That means prevent the rehearsal of them. So if I think of not a problem behavior, but something like a recall, we used to say, be more exciting. You need to be more exciting than dirt. Wow, that puts a lot of pressure on people. And it really isn't about you being more exciting. We have to think about what is the weak concept. What's the tunnel that we want to darken? Or what's the tunnel that is already dark that we want to brighten up? It's engagement with the owner. We want to build proximity to the owner, a love of being near the owner. And we do that through engagement games. Recall is not the problem. It is not that my dog does not have a recall. It is that my dog does not have a strong enough concept of engagement with me, proximity to me, and disengagement from the environment. So, for example, you have a pessimistic dog and you have a pessimistic recall. And here's the owner going, Fido, 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 come back. And the dog is going, I'm really enjoying being free. I could come to my owner, but I'm not going to. I'm running off. I'm going to play keep away. All of those possible choices that are at the big end of the choice funnel. And maybe the dog's been punished for recalling. Maybe the dog has been inadvertently punished for recalling by coming and then being put in a crate or being put on leash. All of that means loss for the dogs, and that's a punishment for the dog in the dog's brain, not that we intend to do it. And so all of that is not increasing value for proximity for the owner. So if we can build the concept of proximity, and we can build the concept of disengagement, and we can build optimism, then we have a dog who's like, you call them and they're like, oh, I love this game. They're going to play with me. We're going to do stuff together. And the more that you build that, the stronger your recall is going to be. So again, the dog, we are working with concepts of proximity, of disengagement with the environment, of optimism. We're also working with all the games that we're playing. And we're also building the value of the one choice that we want, which is when I say Fido, you get to come to me because I am worth it. And that's the time when you come to me that we get to play all those fabulous games. So by doing that, we're actually reducing all of those other choices, the choices of running away, the choices of I'm just going to go back there. The choices of running away, the choices of sniffing the ground, all of those are being reduced because we're reinforcing the one choice we want over and over and over and over again. So when I'm faced with a struggle, when I'm training, life with dogs is training. There's no stopping that. You're training for life. When I'm faced with a struggle like jumping on the counter or stealing things or jumping on people or not coming when called, instead of focusing on the struggle, look at what you can do instead. So instead of asking myself or my trainer, how do I stop my dog from, because then you only have the choice of punishing that behavior. How do I stop my dog from jumping up, lunging, barking, pulling? You can't stop the dog from doing any of those things. What you get to do instead is ask your question. My dog is jumping up. Is it because he's stressed? Is it because he's excited? Is it because he's pessimistic? Is it because he's frustrated, nervous, fearful? Is it because I need to strengthen disengagement? Is it because I need to strengthen proximity? That helps you find the things that you get to do to help your dog in those situations. So when we're looking at the brain and we're looking at those big building blocks of concepts and what concepts we need to be strengthening, we are actually reshaping the brain. And within those building blocks, another way of looking at it more microscopically is choice tunnels. How do we help the dog brighten up those choices that we really want to do, we really want them to make? So we're talking about cognitive restructuring. And when we're looking at the struggle, so it might be paying attention to the owner, it might be jumping on people, it might be focusing on dogs or people, it might be biting or nipping, it might be over arousal. We can actually, instead of focusing only on those struggles, we can work on those struggles, create the concepts that we want, and build the choices that we want with those concepts. So we might build disengagement. A dog who's disengaged from the environment is not focusing on dogs and other people. Proximity to you, dog who has proximity to you is not focusing on other dogs and people, is probably not jumping up on other people either. It's building self-control and calmness. It's a dog that comes away from things. It's a dog that walks easily on a leash. And it's a dog who behaves even when off leash, because it's not about your commands and cues. It is about now how the dog thinks and how it perceives the world. It's a dog who greets other dogs nicely and chills in the house. So concept training is actually the science that gets real life results because we're working with the driver of the dog. We are working with the brain. And there's always a game for that. No matter what your struggle is, there is a game for that. So now a little bit that you've probably been waiting for all this time of how this class is going to work. We are always going to start without the dogs. Because in my belief system, when your dog is with you, when your dog is on leash, they are a partner to you in a team event, and your focus gets to be on them. It is not, I hate seeing the dog on the end of a leash and an owner on the phone. That is not fair to the dog, because when they choose to disengage with us, we then get mad, but we disengage all the time from them. So we're always going to start without dogs so that we can have time as humans for quick questions and for reflecting on our week, how the week went, what wins did we have. Sometimes you're going to end up being a little bit late for class. You're going to feel rushed. Maybe your day was crappy and you come in, you're here, but you're really not ready to bring your dog in. Come in, sit in a chair, take in information, leave your dog in the vehicle. When you are ready to work, go and get your dog. It's never, ever fair. And oh, I know it because I've done it. It is never fair to work with your dog when you're not ready, or you're resenting working with them, or you've come from a crappy day and your mind is still on that crappy day. It can be very, very frustrating for you and your dog. So if you're late or rushed, just come in without the dog and just sit. And then when you're ready, you can start. I will always demo what we're doing, ask if there's questions, then we'll practice together. And then there's going to be time for practicing for questions again. And in between, there will be downtime for the dogs because dogs can actually only work for about 3 minutes at a time. So a class of 45 or 60 minutes is huge for them. And they actually need downtime in between. It's not great downtime. It's not like going to sleep downtime. But if they have something to chew or a snuffle mat, it's a little bit of time just for their brain to coalesce some of the things that they were working on. Often when you work with a dog and you're struggling a little bit, if they can go and have a nap, they will wake up actually knowing what you were working on, because it's called roll forward, and all animals do it in their sleep. So make sure your dog has some downtime in between. The classes will be usually about 45 minutes, time for us to talk in the beginning. Then we work the dogs for about 45 minutes and we put the dogs away. And then we have another 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, to go over any questions that you have at the end. Again, like to do it without the dogs, if at all possible, because then your focus is on the human and not you trying to manage your dog while you're trying to listen. So also remember that you have paid for 24/7 access to the Google Classroom and to my help. So use that. There is a Google Classroom for your class. All of the videos, everything that we do in class is there in video form. Use the Google Classroom. Send me video, post it on the stream. It's like, wow, I was working with my dog on boundary games and this was going and I don't know if it's right or wrong. Take a video of it, post it on the stream, or even just email it to me. Ask me, how is it going? What do I think? Because this is your time with your dogs. The next 6 weeks is for you to use all of my time up, focus at helping you. That's what you've paid for. Use it. If you don't have access to the Google Classroom, let me know. What to bring for class. Number one, obviously, food, the best food. If you have ditched the bowl, which many of us have, which means we use most of our food for mental enrichment, mental stimulation, or training with our dogs, then that's what we do all the time at home. This gets to be part of their daily food allowance, but it's like they're eating out. So it's like us going out for French fries and a hamburger or something. This is the equivalent for dogs. It needs to be something that they really, really, really want, not their kibble. So you want the best. You want small, smelly, soft food. And seriously, I'm trying to see my picture as well as what my border collies eat food, soft food that's about that big. It's not about big pieces of food. Dogs are like toddlers or young, I guess, a kid, where they believe that 5 nickels is worth more than 25 cents. So I want to be able to give my dog 5 nickels worth of food rather than 25 cents because it means more to them. Please bring your dog on a collar or harness. and a regular 6 to 8 foot leash. No retractable leashes, please. If you want to discuss that with me at some point, I can let you know why I have such strong feelings about retractable leashes. If you're in the intermediate class, you may need a long line, which is like 10 feet at some point. Just have it with you in your training bag. Please bring a water bowl and water for your dog. There is nothing wrong with my water. There is nothing wrong with them sharing water bowls, but do know that some dogs prefer their own water. And if you're upstairs in the building, it's really hard for the dogs to walk past all the other dogs to get to the water bowl. So it's just way easier if you bring your own water and water bowl. And upstairs in the building, we actually have boot mats that you can put your water bowl on. Don't worry if it gets spilled, they all do. Bring a long-lasting chew or a topple or a snuffle mat for your dog that it can have during downtime. As I said, dogs only learn effectively for about 3 minutes at a time. Class is 45 minutes. It's extremely hard for them. They need downtime. Bring a treat pouch for your food. No plastic bags in your pocket. I train a lot with food in my hand. If you're in one of the outside classes and it's wasp season, having food in your hand is never a good idea. So I do tend to use food in my pockets or in a training pouch. And if I'm outside, I check for wasps. But I do train a lot with food in my hand. And I also teach my dogs that jumping at my hand for food does not get you the food. What gets you the food is calmness. I prefer not to have plastic bags in the pocket because you just can't reward in a timely manner that way. However, Tupperware containers on a shelf or Tupperware containers on top of your car where you're digging in and getting another handful of food, absolutely appropriate. But again, soft, smelly, and small. Please bring your own raised bed or your dog bed. If you don't have a raised bed, if you need to use one of my raised beds, that is absolutely fine. I prefer that you guys put towels on them, excuse me, just so that I don't have to take them off as often and wash them. Masks are also required. They are at this point anyway. So if it's provincial government law, when you hear this, masks are required for indoor classes, and even for the outdoor classes, have a mask with you, because if the wasps get really bad and we only have 4 people, we will be moving inside. If you have any other questions, feel free to let me know. I am very, very happy to see you all, to talk to you all about anything you need. If you're having trouble with the Google Classroom, let me know about that. I can give you a quick zoom through it. Thank you for listening. Sorry it was so long. I didn't intend to go on for forever. But I think there's some really important information in there about how dogs learn and how we can most effectively train them. So see you all.